11 minutes before my husband's campaign launch went live, he told me he had been sleeping with his campaign manager and asked me to stand beside him while he denied it. "You don't have to say a word," Paul said. "Just take my hand when I call you up. If you walk out, you're answering the reporter for me." We were behind the stage at the old Westbridge Rail Depot, separated from 120 supporters by a black curtain and 2 portable light towers. On the other side, a local high school jazz band was finishing its last song. Volunteers in blue Paul Ortiz for county board shirts were lining up behind the podium. My name appeared on the event schedule at 6:41. Lena joins Paul, family intro. At 6:42, my husband made his demand. The live stream was scheduled for 6:53. I stared at him, waiting for the sentence to become less exact. Paul was 48, broad-shouldered, usually incapable of standing still when he was nervous. Now he was motionless. I asked who the woman was. He looked toward the equipment table instead of answering. Claire Donnelly stood there with a headset around her neck and a tablet against her chest. She had managed his county board campaign for 5 months. I had eaten dinner with her twice, thanked her for protecting our weekends, and approved the navy dress she was wearing because she had texted me that afternoon to ask whether it looked too formal. Claire lowered her eyes. That was my answer. Paul touched my elbow. A reporter got photographs from the Harbor Hotel garage. They look worse than they are. Were you sleeping with her? Lena, listen to the whole thing. Were you? His jaw tightened. Yes. The word landed cleanly. No rumor, no slow investigation, no misunderstood message. Then he began reducing it. It had been a bad period. It was already over. The hotel had nothing to do with campaign money. Claire had become emotionally dependent on him. He had tried to end it. The photographs showed one night and could not prove a relationship. None of those sentences answered the question that came next. How long? That's not what we need to solve in the next 10 minutes. He pointed toward the stage as if time itself had taken his side. The Westbridge Ledger emailed at 4:30. They're going to publish whether we comment or not. My statement says the images are being circulated without context by people who want to damage the campaign. All you have to do is stand with me. We deal with us tonight. For 19 years, I had watched Paul turn urgency into authority. He owned a landscaping company with 4 crews and more work than he could schedule. When an irrigation line broke, he became the calmest person in the yard. When a storm dropped limbs across 3 client properties, he built a route before anyone finished complaining. That competence was part of why I loved him. It also meant he knew how to make his chosen emergency feel like everyone else's assignment. I was 45 and managed operations for a regional dental practice. My job was mostly people, payroll, and the unglamorous difference between a plan and something that could actually happen. I had supported his decision to run because the county had spent years approving commercial projects while ignoring drainage problems in older neighborhoods. Paul knew the issue. He had helped residents for free after 2 floods. His campaign was not invented from nothing, which made the betrayal harder to file under fraud. He had done real good. He had also brought the woman he was sleeping with into a room where he expected me to turn my body into evidence for him. What exactly are you going to deny? I asked. Paul pulled a folded page from inside his jacket. The statement did not say the photographs were fake. It said outside interests had circulated misleading images to attack a devoted husband and father, called Claire a valued professional colleague. It ended with, my wife, Lena, knows my character and stands with me tonight. I didn't approve this. It's a campaign statement, not an affidavit. It uses my name. Because you are my wife. The sentence was so ordinary that I almost missed what he meant. Being married had become blanket permission. Claire moved closer and said, Paul, this isn't what you told me we were doing. He turned on her. Not now. She removed the headset. You said you were going to tell Lena before the event and postpone the launch. I said I would handle it. You said she knew we had become close. I looked at Claire. Did he tell you I knew about an affair? She shook her head. He told me your marriage had been private and separate for a year. Paul spoke over her. This is exactly why we cannot do this in a hallway. We're not in a hallway, I said. We're behind a stage you want me to walk onto. Someone called the 5-minute warning. The MC began gathering note cards. Paul lowered his voice. Mateo is watching from Ben's house. Sophia shared the stream with everyone at school. If you leave now, our children learn about this from a comment section. Our daughter Sophia was 20 and away at college. Our son Mateo was 16 and spending the evening with his best friend because we had agreed a campaign launch was not where he should have to perform family enthusiasm. Paul had just turned the protection of our children into another timer. Then stop the event, I said. Tell your volunteers there is a family emergency. If I stop now, the story becomes the only story. The donors walk. The slate drops me. We lose 5 months of work because you couldn't stand still for 90 seconds. The cruelty was not loud. That made it easier to hear. I asked whether Claire would be on stage. He said she would remain off camera. Claire said, "I'm leaving." Paul told her she was under contract through the primary. She stared at him. "You think my employment contract requires me to help you use your wife as a denial?" She set the headset on the table. A young event producer named Devin Pike approached with a clipboard and stopped when he saw our faces. "We need Lena at stage left in 2 minutes," he said. Paul answered, "She'll be there." I said, "No, I will not appear in the family introduction." Devin looked between us. "Do you want me to hold the program?" Paul said no. I said yes. Devin did not move. He was 26, responsible for timing, not our marriage. I asked who had authority to delay the stream. He said the campaign chair and Paul. Both had approved the schedule. "Then do not hold it for me," I said. "Remove my name from the introduction. I am not participating." Paul stepped between Devin and me. "Give us 1 minute." "You have had 11, I said. I walked toward the service exit, but Devin followed and asked whether I had approved the family introduction video. I stopped. "What video?" He turned his clipboard around. The cue sheet listed a 48-second pre-recorded segment titled Lena. Why Paul Shows Up. I had never recorded it. Paul said it was old footage from a neighborhood flood relief dinner. Nothing more. Devin's concern changed from awkwardness to procedure. The edit was delivered this afternoon with an approval note from Claire's account. Claire looked up sharply. "I did not approve a Lena video." Paul said the media team used Claire's shared login. Devin asked me whether I wanted to see it. Paul told him there was no time. I said yes. The 3 of us crowded around a preview monitor while the band hit its final chord beyond the curtain. The video opened with family photographs from our 19th anniversary, then cut to an interview I had given at a volunteer dinner 2 years earlier. In the original interview, I described why Paul kept returning to a flooded block after his company's free work was finished. The new edit removed the question and left me saying, "He does not disappear when things become difficult. If Paul tells you he will stand beside you, he will." A title beneath my face read Lena Ortiz, wife and first supporter. The final frame said trusted at home. Trusted in Westbridge. My stomach tightened in a way the confession had not caused. The affair was Paul's private betrayal. This video was a prepared public answer in my voice, assembled before he supposedly ran out of choices. I asked when the file had been created. Devin checked the delivery record. The export time was 3:18 that afternoon, more than an hour before the reporter's email, according to Paul. Paul said the campaign had produced it as a normal introduction earlier in the week and re-exported a caption correction. That explanation might have been true. What mattered was that he intended to use it now, after admitting the affair and before telling me it existed. I asked Devin to remove it. Paul said, "You cannot pull a paid media asset 11 minutes before launch." Devin answered carefully, "We can cut any cue. The question is who authorizes it." "I do," Paul said. "Run it." Claire came beside us. "The approval note from my account is not mine. I was at the printer at 3:18. Paul looked at the stage clock. 6:50. 3 minutes. I did not yet know whether he had used her login, whether a volunteer had, or whether Claire was protecting herself. I knew enough to make one decision. If that video runs, I told Devin, I will walk to the front of the room and tell the audience it was used without my knowledge after Paul admitted the affair. Paul stared at me. That would be deliberate sabotage. No. It is advance notice of what I will do if you put words in my mouth. Devin removed his radio earpiece. I'm cutting the video, he said. I'm not qualified to judge the rest, but I won't knowingly air disputed personal footage. The MC announced Paul's name through the curtain. The crowd rose. Paul had one last chance to stop. Instead, he buttoned his jacket, looked at me and said, "If you walk away now, don't expect me to protect you from what people assume." Then he stepped into the applause alone. For the first 30 seconds, no one in the audience knew the program had changed. The MC described Paul as a small business owner, flood recovery volunteer, husband, and father. The light at stage left came on for me. No one entered it. Paul crossed the platform smiling too widely and gripped the podium with both hands. Devin cut the family video and advanced to the campaign logo. I stayed behind the curtain because leaving through the service door would have taken me past a line of volunteers, and because part of me still expected Paul to choose a version of the truth that did not require my help. He began with drainage, road maintenance, and permit delays. His prepared remarks were good. I had heard them at our kitchen table and suggested cutting 2 statistics that no one would remember. For 6 minutes, he sounded like the man I thought I had married. Then he said, "You may notice my family isn't up here tonight. Lena has never enjoyed politics, but she is, as always, the steady center of my life." Claire whispered, "Oh, Paul." I stepped away from the curtain. He still had not mentioned the photographs. Perhaps he planned to finish before the reporter could ask. Perhaps he thought the old description of me was harmless. But he had just turned my absence into support. I walked toward the lobby instead of the stage. Near the rear doors, a Ledger reporter named Elise Garner recognized me and asked whether I would answer one question after the speech. I said I did not know yet. She did not block me or raise her phone. "Your husband's campaign sent a statement saying you stand with him," she said. "Did you authorize it?" "No." "Do you dispute it?" Before I could answer, applause rose for the final line of Paul's speech. Volunteers moved folding chairs to prepare for questions. Claire reached us and said Paul had been involved with her for 8 months. She did not whisper. Elise heard. I asked Claire if she was choosing to speak on the record. Her face went pale. "No, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking." Elise said, "Then I will not quote that sentence unless you confirm it on the record." That small act of professionalism mattered. Kept the next choice mine. Paul called for questions. Elise returned to the press row. The first 2 questions concerned property taxes and a bridge repair. The third came from a radio host who asked about the photographs circulating online. Paul unfolded the statement he had shown me. "Private images have been stripped of context and passed around by people who want this campaign to fail," he said. "Claire Donnelly is a trusted colleague. My wife knows my character, and our family is united." Every face in the room turned toward the empty light at stage left. I could have left and allowed silence to become whatever Paul named it. I could have walked on stage and exposed every detail. Instead, I moved into the center aisle where he could see me. My voice did not carry at first. "Don't use my name, Paul." The radio host turned his microphone toward me. Paul said, "Lena, please." I spoke louder, not to deliver a speech but to correct one fact. I learned about the relationship 11 minutes before this event. I did not authorize that statement, and I am not standing with it. The room made a low sound, more breath than reaction. No applause followed. Paul's campaign chair closed his eyes. A volunteer near me lowered her phone. Paul said, "This is a private family matter, and my wife is understandably upset by misleading information." I answered, "It is private now that my name is out of your statement." Then I walked through the rear doors. The whole exchange lasted less than 20 seconds. My hands began shaking only after the doors closed behind me. Claire followed me into the depot courtyard. I told her not to come closer until I knew whether I wanted her beside me. She stopped near a planter. The evening was hot, and campaign signs kept lifting in the breeze where volunteers had taped them to the railing. Claire said she would resign immediately. I asked her not to turn resignation into a favor for me. "Tell me what I need for my health and finances. The rest belongs to you and Paul." She said the relationship began in November after a late canvassing meeting. Paul told her our marriage had become an arrangement centered on the children and that we planned to separate after Sophia's spring semester. Claire knew we still lived together. She knew I attended campaign events as his wife. "I kept deciding the next promise would be the honest one," she said. "That was selfish." I asked whether campaign money paid for the Harbor Hotel. She said no. The room was charged to Paul's business card after a landscaping conference. She had not known he intended to deny the relationship until he called at 5 that morning and asked her to prepare talking points about a politically motivated smear. She refused. He told her he would tell me before the launch and postpone. Instead, he asked the media volunteers for the family video. Did you approve it? No. My account stays logged in on the campaign laptop. That is my fault, but I did not send the note. I asked her to preserve the account log and not alter anything. She agreed. The depot doors opened and 2 supporters came outside pretending to make calls. I did not want the courtyard to become a second stage, so I walked to my car. Paul called before I reached it. Come back inside, he said. We can say you misunderstood the timing. Did I? You misunderstood what I meant by relationship. Claire and I were ending it. You said you slept with her. I'm not denying that to you. I'm saying the public does not own the details. Then stop giving the public my answer. He said the event was collapsing, volunteers were crying, and the chair wanted to suspend questions. What do you want me to do? I asked. Come in. Sit in the front row. We issue a correction tomorrow. A correction to what? That you learned today. We can say we have been addressing private challenges and remain committed to our family. Are we? He paused. We could be if you stopped making permanent decisions in shock. The confidence behind the request finally broke something open in me. He was still treating reconciliation as copy we could approve before the facts. I told him I was driving to my sister's house and would contact him the next morning about our son and the house. Do not send any statement using my name. Do not bring campaign staff to our home. Do not ask Matteo to defend you. Paul said, You are making me sound dangerous. I am telling you the boundaries because you keep acting as if silence means permission. I ended the call. My sister Rosa lived 12 minutes away. I drove there slowly because my hands had not stopped shaking. Before I reached her street, Sophia called from college. She had seen a clipped video of my correction, already posted without the context of Paul's statement. Mom, what happened? She asked. I pulled into a pharmacy parking lot. I did not tell her she had watched our family end. I said her father admitted a relationship with Claire before the launch and tried to use my name in a denial. I had corrected that and left. Are you safe? She asked. The same question I had expected to ask my children came back to me. I said yes. She asked whether Matteo knew. He had texted her only a question mark. I called him next. He was 16, not a voter, strategist, or witness. I gave him the same short facts and told him he could stay with Ben's family until I picked him up. Did Dad make you go on stage? He asked. No, he asked. I said no. Is that why the light was empty? That image would stay with me. My son noticing not the argument but the illuminated place where I had been expected to stand. Yes, I said. The light was empty because I did not agree to be there. At Rosa's house, I turned off notifications and wrote down the timeline while it was still clear. Reporter email claimed at 4:30. Video export at 3:18. Confession at 6:42. My correction shortly after 7:04. The export time did not tell me why the video had been prepared, but it made Paul's account incomplete. At 8:17, campaign chair Miriam Shaw emailed me. She apologized that my name and footage had been included without direct confirmation. The campaign had ended the question session early but not the launch. Paul remained a candidate. Miriam froze further posts referring to our family and asked whether I wanted the disputed video deleted. I asked her to preserve the original file, delivery record, and access log, then remove it from future use. She agreed. That was the narrow correction Paul had refused to make. Claire sent one message with the dates necessary for medical testing and confirmed she had resigned. Paul sent 19. They moved from apology to strategy, then accusation, then apology again. The last said, you could have saved us both by standing there for 1 minute. He was right about the launch. 1 minute might have saved it. What it could not have saved was us. By morning, my name appeared in 3 versions of the same story. One headline said, County Board candidate faces personal questions at kickoff. Another said, wife contradicts Ortiz during campaign event. A social media account with no connection to Westbridge called it the most brutal live exposure of the year. It edited out Paul's use of my name and left only my correction, making me look as though I had come to humiliate him. I wanted to explain every second. Rosa asked what explanation would change for people who had already chosen aversion. The answer was none. I sent one statement to the ledger. Paul Ortiz referred publicly to my support after I asked not to participate. I corrected that statement. I will not discuss private details or participate in campaign coverage. Elise printed it without embellishment. Then I stopped responding. Paul came to Rosa's house at 10. She told him I had not agreed to a visit. He said he needed to see his wife, so I stepped onto the porch rather than make Rosa a permanent gatekeeper. Paul had not slept. He began with the children. Sophia was refusing his calls. Mateo wanted to stay with me. Paul said my public correction made them believe the affair was worse than it was. The affair lasted 8 months. I said. Claire told you that? You did not. I was going to. After the primary? He looked at the street. After I ended it cleanly. I asked when he first saw the garage photographs. He repeated for 30. I asked why my video was exported at 3:18. He called it a normal introduction prepared earlier. That did not match the cue sheet, but I did not have enough information to argue. I told him I was separating immediately. Our house was jointly owned, so neither of us could order the other out. Mateo and I would stay with Rosa for a week while we arranged rooms and schedules. We would communicate about the children and essential bills by text. Paul called that punishment. You get to set every term because you were hurt. You can disagree. What you cannot do is announce that I agreed. He left without coming inside. That afternoon, a family law attorney gave me advice with no instant victory in it. Do not empty accounts. Do not change locks. Do not publish messages. Preserve records I already had access to. List shared bills and keep the children's routine stable. A 19-year marriage meant assets, debts, insurance, and retirement accounts would take months to review. Adultery did not automatically give me the house or erase Paul's parental rights. My medical testing was equally undramatic. An appointment, follow-up dates, and private results. At work, I said only that I was dealing with a family emergency. I did not turn 60 employees into an audience. Paul's campaign continued without Claire. Miriam appointed an interim manager and canceled 2 days of events. 2 donors withdrew from the launch week match. Several stayed. The county slate did not remove Paul because no rule required it. His policy positions did not vanish when his marriage failed. That frustrated people online who wanted immediate punishment, but it kept the consequence proportional. My boundary was not a sentence imposed on his whole life. It was the end of my participation in the story he told about ours. For days after the launch, Miriam contacted my attorney with a preserved section of the campaign archive. An anonymous sender had emailed the garage photographs to Paul's campaign address at 2:46 on launch day. The system log showed Paul opening the message at 2:51. 7 minutes later, he accessed Claire's still active session on the depot laptop. At 3:18, the family video was exported and approved from her account. The ledger did not contact the campaign until 4:30. When Miriam confronted him, Paul admitted using Claire's login. He said he panicked after seeing the anonymous email and wanted a backup in case I refused the stage introduction. There was no hack, police case, or elaborate conspiracy. Claire had left her session open, and Paul had used it. The evidence mattered because it closed the timeline. He had more than 3 hours to tell me before the launch. Instead, he built a substitute for my presence, waited until 11 minutes remained, and then called my refusal sabotage. The campaign changed its password policy and documented the incident. My attorney said the records might matter to the use of my likeness and the marital timeline, but they were not a magic lever in divorce. I saved them and stopped trying to turn every fact into a weapon. Paul requested counseling. I agreed to 6 sessions focused on disclosure, co-parenting, and whether repair was possible. In the first, he called the affair a compartment. He loved me and our family, but Claire gave him a place where he felt admired instead of evaluated. I asked whether he understood that I evaluated budgets and schedules because he asked me to help build the campaign. You made everything operational, he said. Even us. It hurt because it contained a small truth. During the campaign, I had become efficient with him. We discussed canvassing over dinner and school pickup through alerts. I could acknowledge the distance without accepting his solution. In the second session, Paul admitted he promised Claire they would be together after the primary. In the third, He admitted he had no plan to tell me if the photographs never surfaced. The campaign gave him a reason to postpone every decision until November. I thought time would make the answer clearer. The counselor asked, "Clearer to whom?" Paul looked down. "To me." He had not chosen Claire over me or me over Claire. He had chosen delay, then tried to make my appearance finance it. Sophia joined one family session by video. She told Paul she would speak with him as her father but would not attend campaign events or defend him to friends. Matteo declined counseling and asked for dinners with Paul before resuming overnights. His preference mattered, but it was not the only factor. Paul accepted a temporary schedule without turning it into a court fight. These were the first agreements in months that said exactly what they meant. The campaign tried to move on. Paul returned to door-knocking, but every interview began with the launch. He called it a painful family breakdown without again claiming I supported him. 6 weeks after the depot, he asked me to sit in the back of one fundraiser off-camera so major donors would see we could coexist. "You wouldn't have to say anything," he said. The sentence returned me to the black curtain and the empty light. "That was the first offer," I told him. "My answer has not changed." This time there was no audience, reporter, or clock. The boundary did not require any of them. At the next counseling session, Paul described my refusal as a failure to separate marriage from politics. The counselor asked him why a political fundraiser needed his estranged wife in the room. He did not have an answer that survived being spoken aloud. Before we left, he emailed Miriam in front of me. "Remove every photograph of Lena and the children from active campaign materials. Do not invite them to events, and do not describe their absence." He did not ask me to praise him for it. The email repaired nothing between us, but it was the first time he carried a boundary into the campaign instead of asking me to carry his explanation out of it. 2 days later, Miriam confirmed the changes and sent no further requests. The practical effect appeared first in the campaign office. Staff replaced the launch photograph with a plain county map, rewrote the volunteer script, and removed the line describing Paul as a candidate backed by his entire family. Miriam kept the empty space rather than substitute a photograph of the children. That choice did not repair the launch, but it ended the attempt to turn our private relationships into campaign credentials. Removing the family photographs forced the campaign to stand on Paul's record instead of our marriage. For 3 weeks, he kept the schedule. Door-knocking on Saturdays, 2 neighborhood forums, 1 breakfast with contractors. At the first forum, a voter asked whether he still claimed the garage photographs were misleading. Paul said the relationship was real and that he had been wrong to speak for me. The answer was late, brief, and not rewarded with applause. It also meant the campaign could no longer treat the launch as a misunderstanding. Questions about drainage and permits resumed, but donations did not. The interim manager cut digital spending, volunteers stopped filling every shift, and the county slate declined to feature Paul in its next group mailer. None of those decisions came from me. I did not call donors, contact opponents, or send the access log to reporters. Paul's campaign weakened because the people responsible for it evaluated the candidate and the resources left to them. When he canceled a second fundraiser for lack of staff, even he stopped calling the problem temporary. Paul suspended his campaign 9 weeks after the launch. He cited staff turnover, fundraising losses, and the need to address his family. Those reasons were accurate, though incomplete. A replacement candidate joined the county slate and later won the seat. Paul kept his landscaping company. Some clients left. Most did not. He sold 1 truck to reduce overhead after campaign debt strained the business. Not because a judge or the county took anything from him. Claire found communications work in another city. I learned that from Miriam months later and did not seek more. The story did not end with everyone who hurt me ruined. It ended with each of us carrying consequences connected to our choices. My decision about the marriage took longer than the one at the depot. Paul became more honest once there was no campaign to save. He gave me a complete timeline, opened the relevant financial records, and answered health questions without bargaining. He also kept returning to the same defense. He believed our marriage was strong enough to survive 1 staged appearance. "It wasn't the appearance," I said in our 5th session. "It was that you decided the truth could wait until after my usefulness." He cried and admitted he had spent his adult life believing every crisis could be managed if he controlled the sequence. First win the room, then explain the compromise. First secure the contract, then absorb the cost. First get through the launch, then tell his wife what she had defended. I thought if you stood there, I would have time to fix it. You wanted my presence to buy time I had not agreed to give. He nodded. It was the first apology without a request attached. It was also too late. After the 6th session, I told him I would file for divorce. He asked whether there was someone else. The question was so far from my actual life that I laughed once and then apologized. There is no one else. I cannot return to a marriage where I have to check whether my face is being used to say something I never said. We told Sophia and Matteo together at our dining table. No campaign language, no promise that nothing would change. We explained what would change first: bedrooms, schedules, bills, holidays. Sophia asked whether we had tried. Matteo asked whether he would have to choose one house permanently. We said no. Paul did not ask them to forgive him in the room. I did not ask them to validate me. The divorce took 10 months. We sold the house because neither of us could buy out the other while keeping enough cash for legal fees and college costs. The sale involved inspections, repair credits, and a buyer who disliked the roof color. Retirement accounts were divided through the proper orders. Paul kept the company after evaluation and an offset through other assets. I kept my car and more of the liquid savings. There was no secret fortune or courtroom confession. The campaign expenses came from a separate political account except for the hotel charge on Paul's business card, which he reimbursed. Our lawyers spent more time on health insurance and the house than on the affair. Reality did not treat betrayal as an asset category. It treated it as one reason two people could no longer agree on a shared life. Matteo began staying with Paul every other weekend after 3 months. At first he packed as if crossing a border. Later he left shoes at both homes. Sophia returned from college for Thanksgiving and insisted on 2 meals rather than one table stage to prove we were fine. Paul was hurt. I was relieved. On Friday, the children ate with him. On Saturday, they came to my apartment, where Rosa burned the first pan of rolls and Matteo complained that 2 Thanksgivings involved too much turkey. The holiday was imperfect and true. Paul and I learned to communicate through short messages containing dates instead of interpretations. We argued once about a school fee, resolved it, and did not attach the affair to the payment. The internet moved on faster than we did. For several weeks, strangers clipped my sentence from the depot into videos about loyalty, revenge, and political wives. One account added applause that had never happened. I reported edits that included my workplace or implied violence, then stopped searching my name. Elisa's article remained the most accurate record because it included Paul's statement before my correction. Miriam later sent the unused family video to my attorney as campaign records were archived. I watched it once. There I was at the flood relief dinner, 2 years younger, saying Paul did not disappear when things became difficult. That had been true in that context. He returned to the flooded neighborhood for weeks. The edit was deceptive because it moved a true sentence into a moment where it answered a question I had never heard. I did not need to hate the woman on the screen. She had spoken honestly about the husband she knew then. After my attorney confirmed the evidence archive was complete, I deleted my personal copy. A year after the launch, Westbridge held its annual spring cleanup outside the same rail depot. I almost skipped it, but Matteo needed service hours and asked me to drive him. Volunteers handed us blue gloves and a sign-in sheet. I wrote Lena Ortiz and Matteo Ortiz on separate lines. We spent 3 hours collecting trash along Mill Creek with students, retirees, and 2 county employees who never mentioned the campaign. Matteo found a rusted campaign stake under a bridge, its printed sign long gone. He asked whether it belonged in recycling. I pointed him to the metal bin. On the walk back, he asked whether I regretted speaking at the launch. I told him I regretted being forced to correct my husband in a room full of people. I regretted that he and Sophia learned about the affair through a live stream. I regretted not seeing the distance in our marriage sooner. But do you regret saying it? He asked. No. Your father used my name after I told him not to. I corrected the record. Matteo kicked a bottle cap toward the curb. Dad says he understands that now. I hope he does. At the depot, a volunteer photographer asked our cleanup team to gather on the steps. My body remembered the stage light and the place someone else had chosen for me. Then the photographer said, "Photo is optional. If you're in it, step left. If not, keep walking." Matteo stepped left. I did too. We stood with 27 people holding trash bags and muddy grabbers, not posed as proof of anyone's character. When the county posted the photograph, the caption listed the cleanup total and no family story. I saved it. I used to think a public boundary had to be loud enough to defeat the lie told before it. Mine lasted less than 20 seconds and did not destroy Paul's life. It only removed mine from the statement he was trying to make. The campaign ended later. The marriage took longer. Healing outlasted both. But the decisive moment remained simple. A light came on where my husband expected me to stand, and I let the space stay empty until he tried to fill it with my name. Then I answered for myself and walked out.